So I'd like to call the Albany Public Library Board of Trustees meeting to order and ask you to take a look at the agenda and offer any changes or additions for our consideration. Any changes to the agenda? If not, do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Okay. Alyssa?
A second.
Second, okay. The motion carries. We'll go forward with the agenda. Public comments. Anyone from the public like to comment? Okay.
No.
Give another chance later on. So the minutes from the September meeting, are there any changes or additions to those minutes as written? If not, do I have a motion to approve? Okay, Karen, second?
I'll second.
Mike, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Okay, the motion carries. Now we're on to the treasurer's report and the check register. So we have an updated check register that was distributed today. Are there any questions for Mary? You guys are really quiet tonight.
So I noticed a couple of my other libraries on here, fines and fees. Is that?
So when a book is, if one of our patrons loses a book from another library, they pay us and then we're responsible for them turning around and paying them.
Other questions or comments on the check register? If not, do I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Okay, Allison, second.
I will second.
Mike, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained, the motion carries. Okay, treasurer's report. Anything?
I want to point out
Yes,
to the
please.
board that in the revenue, in the current month revenue, in New York State grants and aid, the figure, it's 254,000. That's because we got the central library money, which was 205,000. We have 32,800 for LLSA, and then we also have money from the Fahey grant, which was 15,500. So that's why we have so much
Okay.
money in
So no
revenue.
windfall, just
Yeah, yeah,
regular business.
right.
So where was the budget projection off on those?
Well, the Fahey
Did we get
grant,
more?
it winds up that the central library money and the LLSA is more than we had gotten in other years.
LSA.
Local, what does that stand for, Scott? LLSA?
Local library services.
Yeah. So
So that was more than we had anticipated?
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah, and we have that money from Fahey, which we hadn't had. We had gotten the money last year. We put it to the balance sheet because we didn't do all the projects for it before, and some of that money was expended this month, and that's why.
But that's only 15,000. So.
Yeah, but the
Yeah.
other things, Alyssa, were much higher
Much
than
higher.
what we had gotten
Okay.
in the past.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion or questions about the treasurer's report? Yes, Karen?
I think we talked about it last time, but it's good to see the fund balance isn't being used. Does it look like we'll be able to avoid that?
This year, yes.
Yeah, there's been a lot of that the past couple of years, too.
Yeah,
Also Mother Nature
yeah.
and retirement.
Okay. So that moves us to committee reports. And so facilities committee, I don't see any minutes here. Did I got that right?
Facilities committee? Yeah, but there's no report here, right?
No, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Never got the minutes.
Okay, let me think. So,
Do you want help?
no. It's there. It really, I was there, I was present for it. I was engaged in it, the conversation.
Conversation.
Okay. Oh, sheds. Okay. So we, the committee, agreed unanimously to support the purchase of two sheds, one here for Pine Hills and one for Delaware. They were part of the original plan for the branch improvement plan, but if any of you recall, there was lots of silly conversation that went on about what the shed should look like. So the pad is here, actually, at Pine Hills for the shed. There isn't a pad at Delaware yet. So the sheds are necessary for storage of outside equipment. And here it would be located next to the garbage receptacles out and back on the right side. And at Delaware, it would be in the rear far right corner. And we made a strong recommendation that they should not be barn-shaped or barn-colored. They should be kind of very plain, regular sheds. So I think we don't need to approve that, but we just
The
wanted,
cost is below
yes,
approved.
yeah, yeah.
So it's an FYI.
It's an FYI. So sheds are coming. Yay, sheds.
And then the panel project.
The panel project. The what?
The electrical panel.
Oh, the electrical panel project. Okay, so we did share with you that the electrical panel at Washington Avenue needs a major upgrade. We've received, we have a previous bid from a woman-owned business, and we also have a new bid. And because the women-owned business bid is within the state contract agreement, we can go ahead and accept that. So we've made a recommendation to go with that bid. And they're going to revise that bid, but we imagine it's going to be in the same range, which is about between $46,000 and $49,000. And that business is LaCourt.
Court.
Right, which we have done business with before.
Okay.
So that's the recommendation. There's also, the last thing is that there are, we have engaged an architect for some initial drawings of some changes to the front of Washington Avenue. You remember we've got that bus shelter coming in front of Washington Avenue, and so we need to do some changing of the landscaping, which gives us an opportunity to do some changes to the front of the push-out part of Washington Avenue, which will include probably an overhang and a larger APL sign. And so we've seen three possibilities, and we've asked for some additional changes, which we will get before anything gets decided upon.
So the electrical panel bid, do we need to approve that?
I don't think so, because
It's under state.
State contract.
state
Okay,
contract,
Okay.
yeah.
So the new RFA that went out, or P, whatever it was, there's only one new bid for that?
We didn't do an RFP.
We didn't do the
So
RFP.
we-
Let's-
We thought we would need to do it.
Okay.
So we went out and asked a business that we already work with what they thought it might cost. So they came in with a bid, I think it was $46,000. But we had a standing bid from LaCourt in that same range. So, so we wanted to see what the range was going to be. Since we have one from LaCourt and it's approved by state contract, then we don't have to go out for the three bids. So that changes that.
Did we vote to do an RFP for that? So we did.
You did. So what happened is you all, yeah, you
guys
approved,
just want to change your mind?
no, you approved a request for bids on the project. What wasn't clear when you guys did that is the court's bid was a state contract bid. So when the court said, look, all of these items are available in the state contract, instead of going through the effort, the process, and the cost of the RFQ, Dan said to them, can you just give me a new quote that shows the state contract price and anything that's not included in the state contract? So the only thing that wasn't included in the state contract at that point is the labor. And I think it came in under $9,000, the labor part. So you could still do the RFP and send it out. It's possible that you'd get a lower, you don't know until you actually do it. But right now, where the contract came in is that you've got contract pricing from the state on all of the material, and the only thing that you're actually going out for is for that $9,000 in labor. So that's the history.
And that's
And
under
I think
our
that's why,
threshold.
I'm sorry, say
That's
again?
on,
That's under your
that
bidding
piece is
threshold.
under our threshold for
For a project.
for a project.
So, you know, you could still do one, you've got time to do it, it's just that was the thinking that Dan explained to me.
So how did it get to the table for RFP? If all this information was already there?
The whole project came.
What's on that?
I'm sorry, what was
You
the
want to talk
question?
about it, Scott?
No, I was
Our
wondering if-
original problem was that we were insured by the Hanover company, and then they came to us and told us that they would not reinsure us because of these electrical panels.
I understand that part.
And that's what we brought it to the board about.
Mhm.
And then it wound up that we went back to Hanover and told them that we had gone to the board and that we requested, to do an RFP for it, but Hanover would not reinsure us because we didn't have a specific action plan in place in time for them to reinsure us. And then we rebid the insurance and we went with a different company. But that's how this all evolved, and then, we
I
also.
understand that
How
part.
we got the quotes.
I was just wondering if we already had a state contract and all this other stuff was already in place, and how did we get it to the table for us to vote on
You
our
didn't.
RFP?
Yeah, you didn't at that time.
So,
LaCourte's original quote, the one that you got for for Hanover and for the construction grant, at the time that they gave it, they did not say it was a state contract pricing. It was when Dan spoke to them again and said, okay, so we've gotten authority from the board to do an RFP, we'll let you know. They said, why are you doing an RFP? We've got a state contract here. They hadn't told us that before. So once they explained that the half of it that's, well, not half of it, 3/4 of it that's material is state contract pricing, that throws the number down. Now, there is still a potential benefit to going through with the RFP if you want to go through the expense. I just suspect that the cost benefit of it is not there.
Right, because the RFP would be for the labor, which is now the bid we have is 9,000 and change. So to expect that we'd get
From a
anything.
woman's own business.
Okay, and that's worth considering. So to think that we'd get anything considerably lower to justify the time and effort.
That's the theory. Yeah, that's the theory. Is there enough bang for the buck there? I have no idea. I'd just be guessing on it. But given that it's just $9,000 of labor, and it has to be a prevailing wage project anyway, my sense is there's probably not a whole lot of wiggle room there.
Well, you
There
answered my
could
question,
be.
you just didn't know that.
Yeah, they didn't
state
know. Dan
contract
didn't know
at the
that they had
time.
been
So that
given
was my
state contract
question.
pricing.
Okay, so we didn't know at the time, so that's why we did that.
Yeah, we-
Rather than hold up the process saying RFP,
Yeah,
I
right.
was just thinking, why don't we just go with the
Yeah,
state contract?
we got what we usually do to kind of help us is get a quote ahead of time. We'll say to groups that we work with, hey, can you look at this and give us an idea? And LaCourte is one of those companies that we work with a lot. So they were in the building, we said, can you give us a quote on this? And they did. And what that does is in the process when we're writing an RFP, it kind of gives us an idea of what the work's going to be, and it also tells us whether this is more than we're allowed to spend without authorization from the board.
So are there any concerns about proceeding down this path now that we have a clear understanding of how we got here? Okay, anything else from facilities?
That's it. There's one more thing, and that is that we'll be working on, as a result of the strategic plan that we'll be discussing at the end of this month, the facilities committee will reconvene again and work steadily on a capital plan. It's one, we're probably in deficit right now in that we don't have a capital plan, a plan for all of our facilities. So this is the 5-year capital plan that we've been talking about. We're gonna be looking at the 5-year financial plan tonight, and that'll be part of our strategic discussion. So we've set a timeline of the new year to have a draft of, the beginning of an outline for the capital plan. That would include at some point a timeline for what begins to happen with these buildings and how do we need to begin to plan for replacement of equipment and upgrade and all of those things. So that'll be coming.
Mary?
Love it if you would have at least a first pass on 2017 and 18 for early January, and then we can incorporate it in the budget.
That's great. That's what we're
yeah.
hoping to be able
That'd
to
be
do.
great.
Yes, Mary?
Just one question, we're talking about bidding thresholds. What is the bidding threshold for?
For public work.
Mm-hmm.
To go out under law, it's $35,000.
Do you have a policy?
Your policy sets lower limits for the various things that you have to actually do. For example, the law doesn't require you to do professional services contract. Your policy specifically says you do professional services contracts. So.
I can get you a copy of that purchasing policy for you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for that comprehensive and full report.
I knew it was there. It was there. Just takes a little.
Okay, and I don't see any minutes from the Finance Committee.
No, it was a very small meeting.
Okay.
So there were two things that were discussed at the Finance Committee. It was the 5-year plan, which Mary's going to talk about later, and the other was the investment policy. That's been a long-awaited event, and you can see there's a pass out of it. And on page 3, the only change that was made was this one section was taken out, and maybe Bob could explain.
Yeah, and I was going to bring this up during P&G. Somewhere along the line, there was a miscommunication. So P&G's recommendation in their report, I'm going to urge you not to accept because somewhere along the line, when I sent this marked up red version back to Scott and Allison and Mary after the meeting, they didn't see the red line. I think it probably just didn't show up as a red line document in their document. So the Policy and Governance Committee went on to remove the 6th bullet, except the 6th bullet had already been removed. And so if you remove the bullet they're suggesting, you're taking out a category of investments that you can and may desire to use. So you don't want to do that. That's why I brought these for you tonight. This is the version that the Finance Committee actually approved and sent to P&G for final review. Okay? So the reason for the change is that that is a set of investments that essentially wouldn't apply to you. There is no specific authorization that the controller is giving to libraries to use these type of investments. So there's no point in including it there. The thing that we needed the Finance Committee to do was review that list that's on page 3 and the list in Appendix A. And so when we sat down at the Finance Committee meeting and we sort of went through both lists, they agreed that but for that one change on page 3, the lists were appropriate. Mary Cullinan then confirmed that they are actually lists that are being followed by the current investment manager. And so that review of the investment policy is finally complete.
As long as we have this in front of us and we're discussing it, are there any other points that we need to consider, or it's just that one change?
Just that
Any
one change.
questions or discussion people would like to bring forth with regards to this policy? Yes.
So this is all new for me. I don't know very much about investing, but it looks like the library can only invest in government bonds.
Yeah, it's extremely, extremely limited. There's 2 sections of law that govern how public entities can hold money. General Municipal Law Section 10 governs how you can hold your day-to-day cash. And the biggest element of Section 10, in addition to telling you what types of banks you can use, is that all of your deposits that are not FDIC insured have to be securitized by what's called a pledged collateral security agreement. And basically what that agreement is, it's an agreement with the bank that's holding your money, wherein the bank agrees to hold certain assets aside, pledged to your name, so that if anything ever happened to the bank, you would get your money immediately. They would be holding separate assets aside for you. Those assets are the assets that can be from this column in the back, okay? Under law, any of those 10, I think it is, items are acceptable, maybe it's 11, for a library to use. You'll see that we've only selected 3 of them, okay? And those are the 3 most conservative types. They're basically treasury bonds, New York State fully insured bonds, and T-strips. And that pledged collateral security agreement means that in our case, is it Key? Mm-hmm. Key has set aside a package of investments that it holds. They still own them, but they're pledged to us. So in the event of a failure by Key Bank, we would immediately take those investments to satisfy the deposits that we have on thing. Because we, as you can imagine, we have a lot more money than $250,000 with Key at any given time. So the federal government only insures that first $250,000. The second type of investment that the library can do is basically what's called, longer term, or money that you don't need on a day-to-day basis. There's that fluctuates from time to time, but that's the stuff that you are able to hold on to for slightly longer periods of time. Those are governed by General Municipal Law Section 11. And basically Section 11 limits how you can hold and what you can invest in that type of money. So that's the stuff that's in Article 10 on page 3. The list is actually longer than that. The library has already made a decision to strike some of the less conservative items off that list, and tonight we're striking one more off of it. So those are the types of obligations and types of investment instruments that the library will authorize its investment manager to put your long-term investments in. And Mary has ensured that Key is following this by giving this to Key and then just watching the accounts statements that come in from time to time.
Right.
Unfortunately, good news is these are all very secure investments. Bad news is they tend not to be higher rate of return, so that's why you'll find that you're not making tons and tons of money in interest. But it's better than it was, because for a while there we had a lot of stuff invested in treasuries only, and that was even smaller. So this is better than that. This would be a portfolio that somebody who had retired and was basically living off of their retirement funds would have. Basically something that guarantees that doesn't guarantee, but protects as best it can the principal of the accounts for a low rate of return.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion on the investment policy? Anything else from the Finance Committee?
That was all we discussed.
Okay, so we'll move to policy and governance. And I guess we're starting at Wi-Fi.
Did you want to take it? Okay. So we had 5 policies that were up for review, 3 that were due for this month, and then 2 that had been holdbacks from previous months. So our first one was our Wi-Fi use policy. It pretty much is our standard policy for anybody accessing our Wi-Fi network at the library. We made no changes to it. This was written 2 years ago, so there's no reason that we needed to change anything. Currently, there's some of the stuff that's covered under this that we don't do at the moment, but it allows us to offer it in the future. So like such as a landing page that we're hoping to implement in the near future. When somebody accesses our Wi-Fi page, they'll be asked to enter their library card. Because right now it's just open to anybody. So the Wi-Fi use policy as it's written will allow us to do that landing page. The second one is our acquisition of art policy. Once again, no changes recommended to this. This is kind of protecting us in case anybody ever comes and, is this finishing up their estate and hands us a whole bunch of art and says, we're donating this to the library. This gives us the opportunity to evaluate that art on our own terms instead of accepting everything carte blanche.
So is there a separate policy for the art displays that we have?
Yes, we have an art exhibition policy.
Okay, thank you.
but this is just how we acquire it, and it gives us the opportunity, should we feel the need that something doesn't fit for the library, we have the opportunity to sell it.
Brief question. Is there also a disposition policy, or is that governed under, would that be in the deed of gift?
The accession
Say we wanted
policy?
to dispose of the art, or
That's actually, I believe,
it's already
it's contained in here.
Perfect, thank you.
What else?
Okay, very good.
This had to get passed in order for the board to make a decision as to whether or not to accept the sculpture at Delaware.
Yeah,
That's when this.
it's
this
point
came
number
to-
3 on that, gives
this
us,
came to light for the first time.
Thank you.
next one is our tutoring policy.
But let me just ask, the policy says that we will, this is how we'll accept art and we will decide when we get rid of it, but are you asking if we have a de-accession policy? Like do we want to
Kinda.
make a decision about how we get rid of things?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, it's a good question, because we have some stuff that like needs restoration, or we've had questions of restoration, and if we collect things, then we become like a museum and have archives, that kind of thing, especially with the Albany History Room. That could happen. And de-accession is
But that's not related to art, right?
Sure.
de-accession of art.
De-accession, yeah.
Well,
It would kind of be a
Isn't that
counter
covered
policy
Different
to this.
policy,
What-
if we sold it.
We don't have one. You don't have
Yeah,
a
right.
de-accession policy. 3 gives you the right to decide not to keep something
That's right.
yeah.
if you accept it, but you don't currently have a de-accession policy.
On the current side, we have.
And as long as I've been representing you, that issue hasn't actually come up where you've decided, should we sell something or not? But it's not an uncommon issue for libraries, particularly where a library happens to have some local treasure that is really a treasure, and they want to say, hey, we could build a new wing if we sold this local treasure.
That's
It was that much, but we did have, just so you are aware, I mean, you probably have to have that kind of policy. We do have, we had the art, what's the word? All looked at, categorized, and then we have an
have an
inventory of
archive.
the art,
Yeah.
and we have valuation on the art,
Right.
and then we have that all in our insurance policy.
I
But we
think,
don't- yeah.
oh, I'm sorry. I didn't-
No, go ahead.
No, I think it's probably better that we don't have a specific written policy on that, because it provides more leeway if that issue is to ever come up. And I have to assume if it was anything of tremendous value, whether cultural or monetary, it would come before the board anyway. So.
You would have to.
So, does this policy say that anything that we do accept has to be kept in that archive?
No, it doesn't.
No.
Okay, so,
Yeah,
That
it's-
is-
It's not that restricted.
Because anything we've gotten, we can hang in any one of our buildings.
so in the past, we've gotten things and nobody recalled getting them and nobody knows where they are.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So, and you have people saying, oh, we gave you those, where are they? So, if you're going to accept art, then you're going to, do we need to say in here, if you're gonna accept it, you're going to archive it, so it becomes part of the permanent collection? It's
Until we vote number 3 and do something else with it.
true, but at least
Yeah,
because
You should have a procedure.
you know, Jack McEnany says we have tombstones. He gave them to us, nobody knows where the tombstones are, who knows where the tombstones are? Nobody can recall that story.
Okay, so are you proposing an amendment to this policy?
Or do you
I
think
guess I
that's
am.
more procedural, just making sure that we have it on.
So where
as
would
a
we
proce-
put that as procedure?
It would, because procedures don't get put in the policy, so that would just be probably something we would put in our employee manual. that we're currently constructing. That should we get a piece of art, it would be handled through probably most likely the local history room. It
Well,
would
I
be-
think if you get to that granular level, I agree it's procedural, but I think what Alyssa's saying is basically you need to add a number 8 that says, upon acceptance, art, required by the library will be added to the permanent catalog or something like that.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, just
Okay.
something similar like that,
Yeah.
and then the staff can figure out what that means and how to
Yeah,
do it.
yeah. Everybody agree? Any questions? Okay, good point. Okay, that brings us to tutoring.
Tutoring, once again, is a very standard policy that, encompasses how outside tutors are handled. This isn't tutoring that's offered by the library, this is tutors coming in to perform their services here at the library. And the only change we made is it kind of is a sister policy to the service to children policy, so we put the age in alignment with that. So a parent or guardian, for the last bullet, a parent or guardian must be on the premises at the beginning and end of a tutoring session for any child under the age of 9. And that was our only recommendation for a change.
Okay, so that directly relates to the next policy. if you
Which is
wanna
our service
Talk
to
about that,
children.
which we've had quite a lot of discussion about at several meetings in the past. So-
Correct.
So we're getting there.
We're bringing it to the table for approval. It has come to light with us over the last month that the CDTA and City of Albany School District has worked out an agreement where children age 9 and over are allowed on the bus without a parent or guardian. So since they are 2 of our partners for city services, that we decided to put ourselves in alignment with that. So that does drop our age down 2 years. It used to be 11 and older, so now we have it as 9 or older. And we've also, one of the things that has been in discussion with the Policy and Governance Committee over this policy was working with the different universities and colleges in the area to see, because one of the concerns with staff is that we would love to be able to do this, but putting extra children in the libraries after school or for after school hours puts a huge strain on staff that we don't have the ability to keep them occupied. So what other organizations and partnerships could we forge to help us with that? And it was brought up that we should discuss with the education schools and the social work schools to possibly work on service hours with us. Over the past year, we've sent out many feelers, we've sent out letters, emails to all the universities and colleges, and we had heard nothing back. It was one of these situations where you finally get the right person, and one of our former contacts from another organization had moved over to the University of Albany, and so he opened up that conversation with us. And we had a sit-down meeting, and they are now doing that with their education school, with their school of social work at the University of Albany, probably starting in January. It will be offered, Albany Public Library will be offered its service learning hours. So we, not only for tutoring, but also for help with some after-school programs. So we figured in light of that, we're now comfortable dropping the age down.
That's progress.
I wonder if Arlene knows this. Yes,
Definitely.
She does, okay.
She's at the meeting.
She was at the meeting.
She was such a strong advocate, and she must be pleased with the 2-year drop there.
She was.
Great, terrific, okay.
And this helps, like we said, it puts us in line with the school district and CDTA, and the police department is also, because they were concerned that it would drop lower, and that was a big concern of theirs, so they're comfortable with this as well.
Okay, any comments, question, or discussion about any of these policies? Any further comments, questions, or discussion?
I just want to say that those earlier conversations were difficult in that we wanted to get this policy decided on, but I think it's such a much better policy now that we've waited, we've gotten the best input, and having this continuity it's really helpful for all the kids in this city.
Thorough and deliberate and
Yeah,
judicious.
great.
I
Yes.
have one question
Sure.
about the Wi-Fi. I know this is for Wi-Fi in the library. But I know we're now giving out those Wi-Fi boxes. Do we need to have any kind of policy on?
It follows. It's the same with them.
Okay.
Because it states when they sign out one of the Wi-Fi boxes that they'll adhere to all Wi-Fi, or all library policies, including Wi-Fi and internet access.
Okay, great.
So do I have a motion to approve these policies as amended? Okay,
A second?
and a second, Brenda. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining, the motion carries.
Yay, that's a big chunk of
That
work.
was-
There's a bunch
Our
of.
policy grid is, since we're discussing that next, is now complete.
Good work.
Does
Bravo!
that include the investment policy? Because we didn't discuss that.
Yeah, we did.
Well, I know we discussed it earlier, it just didn't
Yeah.
get brought up at this very moment, so I didn't know. We also were,
Yes,
Yes.
yeah,
Okay.
the list. Yeah, I just put it to the beginning of the queue because we were already talking about it.
all right.
I think Bob said that we might not want to accept the investment policy.
We're
With
accepting
the
it,
change that I gave you.
Yes,
tonight, you're
yes,
okay.
yes.
and that was a
And we're
misprint
chang-
because
and
of the
we're
way I
ex-
printed it out.
I'm
So
sorry.
we'll see.
We're accepting the art policy with the additional
Yes,
eighth
yes,
bullet?
yes.
Okay.
Can you send me the wordage for that?
Doing it right now.
Thank you.
Okay. Just in time. Executive Director's Report.
The library and CSCA has begun contract negotiations. Just for a little history, the contract was actually up last year, and we came to an MOU to extend the contract by 1 year. Part of that was because they had a new rep, and also it helped us keep health insurance costs down. Our deadline is December 1st, so we're moving along rather quickly. We've set dates for all of that negotiation, and I'm hoping to schedule a personnel committee meeting in the next month, just kind of to provide some updates on what is going on with the contract. The library has been awarded its DLD construction funding, which will cover 75% of the project, which is around $37,000 to replace the breaker panels at Washington Avenue. It was brought back to Upper Hudson, and there's additional funds that may be available, and now there is a race to get in additions to that grant. What we will probably do is we were already doing the cameras at Washington Avenue, so we may try to fit that in there and see if we can get Upper Hudson to agree to make that project part of our grant. The Washington Avenue branch held its annual readout for banned books. This is in partnership with the local ACLU chapter. This was a very popular program, and it went really well. We tried it outside. I don't think we'll try it outside again because the buses are a little loud. Youth Services Department also last month was ALA's Library Card Sign-Up Month, and Washington Avenue signed up 57 new youth services cards. Arbor Hill saw a return of its popular Yoga for Beginners program, which we actually saw when we were leaving the branch the other night for our meeting. And also, for the second month in a row, Arbor Hill circulation has gone up over last year. So if you look at the metrics, it says we're still in a deficit from last year, but for the second month in a row, we've seen an increase from month to month, which we're very happy about. Box circulation and door count are up, and they've started back up their digital literacy one-on-one appointments. So if you know anyone who needs help with computers and devices, they've learned that it's better to sit down one-on-one as opposed to doing a classroom. And also the return of their popular tutoring program, which is a partnership with the School of Pharmacy and Albany Medical School. Pine Hills was at the Madison Street Fair, which featured a performance from our Beatbox. Mary noted that there was free grant money. Part of that money paid for the Beatbox program, and it will pay for next year's Beatbox program. It's very popular. We did it at 2 of our outside major events, and it went over very well. And also they do the Raising a Reader program here, which has seen a significant amount of success. It's a program that's promoting parents to read with their children. And I know that they have one family here that has hit 800 books, and another 2 that have hit 700. Delaware has seen a huge spike in program attendance. This was due to in part to an interesting array of topics and activities, including a discussion about extraterrestrial life and rad self-defense training. Howe's Jiu-Jitsu Basics program started back up with 8 female participants. The branch has also started an open mic program for children called Mic Drop. If you want to see something great, there's a video on Facebook of a young man playing guitar while another young lady sings. So it's the type of thing that you watch over and over again because it's just fantastic. North Albany still had strong numbers, although being closed. It is now believed that the infestation was fleas, possibly brought in by an individual who comes into the branch regularly.
It was fleas.
It is now believed to be fleas. We have done a soft launch of our wireless printing, very soft launch. We will fully launch the program once the staff have been trained. We have switched payroll companies successfully. This, I put a note in our report. This was a major thing for any company or business to do. And kudos to the business office and HR for undertaking and successfully doing such a tremendous task. It was, we all woke up that morning a little nervous, and we were all very happy that it happened. Foundation is underwriting additional classes for the How Dancers. They are working on a routine to be part of the Noble Young Gents video shoot. If you don't know who the Noble Young Gents are, they're a group, they're a singing group who kind of have practiced out of our How branch. They want that dance troupe to be a part of their video, and the foundation has been gracious enough to hire, to pay for additional dance classes. And the foundation is also in the process of hiring a part-time executive director. This person will replace our current consultant. And Friends are exploring a membership database, which we've been hoping for them, we've been prodding them to do for a long time now, and we're excited that they're moving forward with that. Things to look forward to in the future. A wireless upgrade, which will really, I think, impact services here. I think make things much better. The CD Pass sale, paperwork is finally signed. That was a little bit of a bounce back and forth with our legal team and their legal team. And they were hoping to have it up and running in September, and we've got the paperwork signed. So, yes, so it's on the way to them. A reminder again.
How did you get it, just out of curiosity?
How did I get it? Through email.
From,
Justin.
all right. Can you just send it back to
I'll
me
send
and
it
make
back.
sure that it was the right one?
Yes.
Because I never heard back from Amanda again.
Okay.
Even though we had settled on that. I just want to make sure that she actually sent the correct one,
Okay.
especially after all of that.
Yes. The Board of Trustee retreat is October 29th. I will remind you every time I see everyone. At Capitol Campus. And also our art show will be December 1st.
Yes.
At this location. Just some housekeeping things that I just need to note. Please note the changes to committee meetings will happen no less than 48 hours notice. And if there's a venue change, we put it in the subject heading. If you're on a committee and need to be notified by other means besides email, please let us know. I'm willing to text you to remind you. I'm willing to call you to remind you. Just let me know ahead of time if you don't check your email every day. It's just sometimes we have venue changes. We're trying to do our Thursday nights. If we do a committee meeting on a Thursday night, we're trying to do it at a branch that's open so that the community feels welcomed. And again, we're willing to call or we're willing to text. Also note that it often takes a bit of time for things to move along once the board has approved something. So don't be disappointed if after a week or two we don't have those things up and running, like the CDTA contract signing. Again, it was negotiations between our council and theirs, and that made the project lag a bit. And that's it for my report, and I'm willing to take any questions.
Really quick, I just want to amend, it's December 2nd for the
December
art.
2nd is the
Questions, comments? Lots of activity, lots of good things happening, lots of hard work.
I have a question. What is the potential additional construction grant revenue from Upper Hudson? What is the total?
There is a library in our system that went for a sizable grant. Their building is actually, they're a school district library. Their building is owned by the school district. They lease it, from what I understand. They needed additional signatures to move forward with their project. They were a little optimistic, and it didn't happen.
Clubbersville?
No. So because of that, there's a significant shortfall. And when that was brought to the DA, the Directors Association said, could you go to Department of Library Development and ask for an extension? They gave us an extension, and we got an email from Tim saying, everybody who has a project that's approved, can you look to see if there's any additions onto that project? We have, I think, about a week to figure it out.
Okay.
We thanks to New York Library Association and librarians who worked really hard at Lobby Day, otherwise known as, what do we call it now? Advocacy Day. We got additional money from the state for our Department of Library Development, construction, grants, funding. So because of that, it was kind of a surprise, and I think some libraries were taken off guard.
So the additional construction funds are definitely available.
They're available. There's about I think it's around $56,000 that's available.
Related question, and not to sound, everybody likes to play nice. What would the consequences be, in jumping ahead a little bit, of not approving the central library budget if we were to not approve that for UHLS? I guess my question is, in an effort to secure that additional funding, is there a way to leverage our approval of their budget?
No, because it's not that Upper Hudson doesn't want to spend the money. They really want to spend the money. It's just that each project, depending on, basically there are grants that are 50% and there are grants that are 75%. It matters on what your school lunch program, what you're saying, the school lunch here is at 91%. So going into this, everybody is fully funded. So really, it's not like Upper Hudson saying, we don't want to spend the money. We all know what happens to the money if it's not spent. If it's not spent, it goes back into what we lovingly call the black hole of the state budget. So Upper Hudson wants it spent. Department of Library Development definitely wants it spent. So it's not like a leverage thing. It's more of, now it's a race to who can, and I think for us, we're at an advantage because we have multiple projects. And it's more of a, how do we finesse a project so that it kind of fits with the original plan? And the fact that it's on a building like Washington Avenue where we have a significant amount of work to do, I'm optimistic that we will be successful.
So if we had that capital plan, you could just look at our capital plan and
Exactly.
pick off a few things.
And,
Yeah.
and in reality, we sent the board, we were asked to do a blue sky type letter, and that was in the board packet. I forgot to look which month it's from. And it was really just Dan and I think Melanie was in the room. We kind of just went, we were given like a week to do it. So we're like, all right, let's just think of all the crazy things that we want to do. And that's why that document was kind of useful, because getting all the cameras upgraded to Washington Avenue was, I think, in that document, and something that we wanted to do. We talked about this in facilities. A master plan for Washington Avenue is needed. I think we've done all of the short fixes that staff and administration have wanted to do there, and now we need to really sit down and say, okay, what is a master plan for this building? Because we're never going to be out of ideas. My staff will never be out of ideas, and I will never be out of willingness to do whatever idea that they want to do. But as we're seeing, it's more than likely we're staying in this building for the long run. And if that's the case, then we really need a big picture idea to kind of move it along. We will never be able to bond for a significant amount of money to rebuild that building, which is what Dan would love to do. Dan and I had this conversation. We would love to bulldoze it and build a new building. It's not going to happen in the next 25 years. So we need to now say, okay, this is our building. This is what we have. How do we see it look, and how can we build onto it to make it look that way? And that's why I will be very happy with the facilities committee does it.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on Scott's report? Thank you very much. Unfinished business, the PERB action on supervisory.
Do you want to, Bob, to explain that one?
Sure. Well, the decision was issued this September 27th. I think we ended up getting it the following Monday. And we got a written decision on the PROB MC application, which you may recall was filed about a year and a half ago.
Bob, can I give a little bit of history?
That's what I'm going to.
Oh, you're going to get
That's
that.
what I'm going to do. So about a year and a half ago, At the request of Scott and with my recommendation that had been sort of lingering for some time, we asked the board for permission to bring a proceeding before PERB to designate as managerial or confidential several of the senior staff and 3 key positions that had always been right on the edge of the union/management line. So there were a bunch of no-brainer positions in there. There was Scott and Mary and Melanie and Marjorie. And then we had also asked to designate as managerial the 3 librarian 3s that run the branches, the administrative staff on the 3rd floor that provide direct function and support to the people that were already designated, and then Dan, who had not actually been designated before, and Stephanie, who had not been designated before. So the process is that you apply to the Public Employment Relations Board and you say, these are all positions that because of the nature of what they do, they shouldn't be included in the bargaining unit. A bunch of them had never been included in a bargaining unit, but the 3 librarian 3s had traditionally been in the CSEA bargaining unit, and the administrative staff, although they had never been placed in a bargaining unit, CSEA had expressed interest in bringing them into the bargaining unit. So the best way to deal with it was to file the proceeding. We filed the proceeding. CSEA had objections to it. We tried to, horse trade and come to an agreement. Ultimately, we were not able to do that, with one exception. I can explain that in a second. And so last spring, in April and May, we went to a hearing before an ALJ at PERB. The hearing lasted a full day. We then briefed the case, and those were finally submitted. There were a couple of extensions requested by the union, and we ultimately finally submitted those in early September of 2015. And a year and 2 weeks to the day of us submitting those briefs, we got the decision from PERB. Ultimately, PERB ruled in our favor on every one of the positions. They agreed that every one of those positions were properly designated either managerial or confidential. The 3 librarian 3s were really where the fight was. And those positions, frankly, have evolved significantly over time. And in Scott's vision of how the administration of the library was going to be set up, it was critical to his leadership team that he had those 3 high-level managers on the management side of the table. And so we were able to prevail on that. CSEA does have a little bit of time to appeal a decision. They've told us that they're deciding whether or not to. Obviously, it does mean that they lost 3 members from their bargaining unit, and the dues that go along with those. We're waiting to hear at this point. But at the negotiating session last Friday, the L3s, Dan and Janeth, all sat in with us at the bargaining table as members of the management team. So it was a big day, and obviously, these are not supposed to be adversarial proceedings. They're really supposed to be fact-finding proceedings, but obviously it's something that the board had authorized us to go forward, and we had told you was a good idea way back when, and we ultimately were successful in that.
Any questions about that? Okay, new business, yes.
Just a quick question, I'm sorry. Since that decision was made in the undertaking of the negotiation for a new contract, have you noticed that decision playing a role at the negotiating table when it comes to talking about the new contract?
No, we actually had the first negotiating session before the decision was available to us, and it had come up as a point of potential disagreement, whether or not the L3s were going to be at the table. We told them that we were including them because we had intended to all along. They said they were going to object to that. I told Charles I'd talk to him about it offline, but by the time I got to talk to him offline, we'd gotten a decision, so it sort of ended that. I will say, so far, and we've only had 2 sessions, but the tone of the negotiations have been very pragmatic, very respectful. I think that both sides understand that there's a lot of piddly little things and there's two big things. And we're trying to figure out whether we can get the piddly little things dealt with before we really have to, have the rubber meet the road on the big things. But CSEA is very aware of the situation that we're in on health insurance. It's not like we just want to change the plan. We can't keep the plan, so they're being very realistic, I think, as to the fact that this is going to be a tough issue, but they're trying to work with us to find a solution. So I'm fairly optimistic that we'll have a good negotiation, that it won't be anything that will be detrimental to the relationship, which was otherwise fairly positive.
Andy?
What are the two big things?
Health and salary. Always check.
See if it's changed, right?
Some
Okay.
things never change. So, and the health insurance is a sticky wicket because we've got both a plan that's expiring and we've got a time deadline. So it's the thing that's really driving the bus right now.
Okay, under new business, the bond refinance project. An update?
Can I give a little bit of history just for new board members to kind of get the whole picture? Just so new board members and newer board members understand, there was a vote in February of 2007. This was the bond for $29.1 million to fund the building of Arbor Hill, West Hill, and Bach, and purchase and renovate Delaware and renovate Howe and Pine Hills. The construction and renovation was done between late 2008 and mid 2010, and the 5 branches opened between 2009 and 2010. Just kind of to give an idea. So, but when we talk about financing the bonds, the best way to put it is it's almost like redoing your mortgage, or really is like redoing your mortgage. And it's important for the board to understand it. Just like that project, first time I redid a mortgage, I couldn't believe the paperwork and the meetings that I had to have. It's the same thing here. There are a lot of lawyers involved. DASNY is involved, who did our original bond, Dormitory Authority of the State of New York, and also the school district, and who else? And also the company that we just hired, PFM. So it's a lot of moving parts, and it's a lot of money because we're at about 20 million now. Is that?
23.5.
Yeah. So
How much is it? Did you say?
I think it was 23.5.
23. So if you have any questions on the history, this is a good time to ask them now.
So this is a project that Mary's been spearheading, and she's been working hard with PFM to get us all on track. And if anything, I'm the anchor in this thing, because I'm trying to make sure that we are moving so fast that you guys have this come flying across your table with no warning. It is at this point going to require a special board meeting to actually take action on this. And we're going to have to talk a little bit about the schedule of that. So everybody has in their packets this tentative schedule for the issuance. We're already a little bit behind on this because we've been waiting for DASNY to appoint bond counsel, and I haven't heard from Gina yet.
I've called twice today and emailed and got confirmation that we're going to get the bond counsel tomorrow.
Okay. So we're waiting for bond counsel because they ultimately are the ones that give the final opinion that the investment world cares about, which is that these bonds are non-taxable and that they're worth their weight in the world of tax-free investments. So ultimately, the process will be more streamlined this time than it was when the library passed the initial issuance back in 2007. However, there are going to be some key documents that this board is going to have to approve. The structure's changing a little bit because DASNY isn't requiring quite as much security as they did the last time. But you are going to have to get reviewed by a third-party reviewing agency this time, which you didn't last time. That review is primarily of DASNY, but they will want to review you too, because they want to understand the library's ability to repay, because that'll go into the rating significantly. I think right now we're talking that that's going to be Moody's, right? They've settled on that?
Mm-hmm.
So,
It's scheduled for October 27th.
So that will be an important date. But the key date in all of this, in order for the library to actually close this deal before the end of the year, is that these things need to be approved by DASNY's board on November 9th. and they can't wait. It's not, I think I have that date, right?
And you have the board mailing October 20th.
I'm sorry, November 16th. No, it is November 9th. It's November 9th. They just don't have it highlighted.
Yeah, but you,
thing. But the problem is even though we have a meeting the night before, they can't wait for us to approve things at that board meeting to find out if it's going to be on the DASNY agenda, because their agenda mails a week before that. So we really are essentially going to need an extra board meeting within the next 1 or 2 weeks. One of the other critical approvals that we need to get here is because of this new structure, the city school district, which is essentially, for all intents and purposes, your tax collector, needs to sign off on the agreement that you will need to sign off on as well, to basically agree by the schedule and the procedure that the bond proceeds are going to be collected from the taxpayers and paid to DASNY. So that agreement, called the Tax Pledge and Collection Agreement, has been very, very preliminarily drafted by DASNY. It has not been reviewed by bond counsel yet because we don't have one. I have taken the draft that they've sent, reviewed it preliminarily for our purposes, and sent it over to the school district's attorney saying, we're going to need you to look at this, we're going to need your Board of Education to approve it. And they have a meeting on October 20th. That is essentially the only meeting that they would be able to approve of that and keep the schedule that we're on. So last week, Scott and I both heard back. Scott spoke to Bill Hogan at this district, and I spoke to Connie Kale, who is the attorney that they've assigned to review that agreement. Connie is doing that work. She's looking at it. She told me she has some drafts and comments this week. Scott heard from Bill that Bill was fine with this process, but wanted the library to pay the costs, which is not unreasonable because, of course, it's your closing. It's not going to be an expensive bill from Connie. You know, it won't be. I can't imagine much more than a few $1,000s at the high end to look at it and make sure that it gets approved by them, by their board. But we still have not gotten a commitment from either one of them that this is going to be ready to be approved by the Board of Ed for the 20th, and so that's what we're waiting on. I have not heard them ask that you approve it first. I'm somewhat surprised. I'm somewhat surprised that they haven't said, do you approve it first? But they haven't yet. So whether or not your special meeting will be before the 20th or after the 20th is sort of a little bit up in the air, but I think right now we can at least conceptually look at after the 20th. So.
And it's not unprecedented that we have special meetings. In 2011, we had 5. 10, we had 1, 2009, we had 2. The last one we had was in 2012. So we haven't had it since.
Yeah, things have been fairly routine, and this type of issue is not unusual that you would approve it at a special meeting either, but you can understand the sensitivities are such that you want to make sure that it's very well publicized. People know that it's happening and what it is. This is good news on every level. I mean, this is saving taxpayers money. So there's nothing to hide about it. It's just, you know, it's one of those things that you're going to have to do correctly and make sure that we stay on the schedule that we're on.
So my plan is after this meeting, everybody's familiar with Doodle. We use it. We've been using it to set up committee meetings. Is to send something out tomorrow morning. And, you know, we want more than a quorum. We want as much of the board there as possible. Because this is such an undertaking and it's a lot of the public's money. So you will see something from me probably a little bit after noon tomorrow, just with the doodle poll that's out there. The quicker the response, the better, because then we can start to publicize it. Stephanie can get it out to the public.
Just one question. I do think that we have to have the board meeting though before the DASNY board mailing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
No
So
question,
I
no.
think that's probably just going to be like a week and a half window that we can have the meetings. We'll
talk
give you
about
those
dates.
dates. So
I
we'll
think
make sure that,
I think the drop dead date for us to meet, I believe, has been set as the 28th of October.
Yeah, but I think that,
Yeah,
well,
but I think
they
before
said the
that.
27th because they're mailing on the 28th.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we need to, you know, we've got a 2-week window.
Yeah.
So their board receives their packets.
Yeah, the other piece though,
postal
is just
mail.
about well, I'll tell you about the dates tomorrow. That's fine.
So what is it that you're going to actually approve? You're going to be voting on one resolution. That resolution is basically going to take all the steps that you need to take. prior to the closing itself, there may be some additional approvals you need to do, but they'll basically be ministerial at that point. The day that you actually meet for the special meeting, you're going to be approving a resolution that says we want to do this, and that we're generally going forward for this amount, and this is the general structure that it's going to be. But there will be a lot of unknowns at that special meeting, specifically who is going to be buying them, the price at which they're going to be buying them. We should have a good sense of the underwriter at that point, who we're dealing with anyway. We'll know who the bond counsel is, we'll know the general framework of the deal, but all of the sort of final details won't be set yet, costs, timing, etc. The other thing you're going to be approving is you're going to have a list of all of the documents that will be part of the transaction. I've told DASNY that we want to have as many of those drafted as possible so that we can go over each of them with you just to explain the concept. You don't have to read these things. Frankly, they are going to be dense, but I want you to know that they're there and be able to ask questions if you choose to read them, choose to look at them. When it's all said and done, the closing transcript on this will be this thick. There are some key documents in that thing. One of them is going to be this tax pledge and collection agreement. Another one's going to be the offering statement that's being dealt with. But those things won't get finalized until after you've acted. Okay. As far as the structure of the deal goes, basically what it is DASNY is going to issue debt on our behalf because you're not allowed to issue it directly. The school district is going to collect, as it has been for a long time, the money that's needed to repay that. Instead of sending that to you as they do now, they're going to send it directly to the trustee, all of it, including the money for operations. And then the trustee is going to release the money for operations to you, keeping only that portion that they need to pay off the bonds. Okay? It's a little bit different than it's being done now, but we think it's workable. Mary's looked at the schedule and looked at the timing of all of it, and I think it seems like it'll be fine. The reason it has to go that way is because DASNY's no longer having the loan agreement and mortgage that they've had in place with you up until this point. And so it's a different way to provide them the security that they need to know that the bonds are going to be replayed, but it's theoretically a simpler way to do it. And it's the way they've been doing it since about 2008. We were one of the last bond deals that were done under the old arrangement. These bonds are not going to be insured. Your old bonds were insured, but there really is no bond insurance industry anymore since the financial meltdown. All of those firms that used to insure bonds basically have gone belly up and don't exist anymore because they couldn't provide insurance when the time came that they needed to. So this will be an uninsured deal. Ironically, notwithstanding that, the rates haven't changed much, and indeed we expect to get a lower rate than we currently have.
I have two questions. The trustee is somebody at DASNY or?
The trustee is going to be a bank. I don't think they've identified who it's going to be yet. The current one is Deutsche Bank, your current trustee. I don't know whether they'll be the trustee going forward or not. I think that they are doing less of that business than they used to. But basically it's an institution that enters into a trust agreement with DASNY and the bond holders to collect and pay the money over to bondholders as necessary.
And you said we won't have the specific numbers, but we'll have a general sense of what the offering's going to be?
We'll know how much we're going out to sell. We won't know the price, but we've gotten some estimates already from PFM as to what to expect.
They'll give us a good forecast, so you'll have good forecast numbers in front of you. And we're selecting the underwriter this week. We did an RFP, and we have 5 respondents, so we will have a lot of numbers for you.
That's a little bit different situation than before too. When year bonds were sold before, they were sold on a public offering. So institutions came and bid to buy the bonds. This time you're going to be doing a negotiated offering. So basically the underwriter that gets selected is going to basically agree to purchase all of these bonds at a set price. The negotiated amount will be set very, very close to the sale date. So you'll know who you're selling them to this time. You just won't know the exact number until the day of sale. And they'll basically look at the market and they'll make their decision as to, what it's going to be.
Andy?
Is there a disadvantage with negotiated sale versus a more public bid or offering?
There's different schools of thought on that. There's some schools of thought that say you almost always get a better deal with the negotiated sale because you're dealing arm's length and they are fully aware of the entire scope of the project and the offering and the issuance. DASNY doesn't generally do negotiated sales for initial offerings, but they do them for refunding. I was surprised to hear that they were willing to do this on this basis, but they're confident that this is okay. So I can't answer it much better than that, Andy, but there's certainly, in the bond markets, it is, particularly in the private bond markets, it's more common to have negotiated offerings than true public offerings, but DASNY does more of the other.
And the visibility, though, you'll be able to see how much they're charging per bond. So in this way, we should get a better price.
Theoretically, that's the economics of them. It's just the person who's buying is more completely aware of the whole thing than basing their decision just on an OS.
Okay, so we'll have a special meeting focused on just this issue, so think about any questions you might have between now and then, and we'll have ample opportunity to have that discussion.
And we hope to have things to you well in advance of that agreement, or that date. I can send you the draft tax pledge and collection agreement immediately, but it may change a little bit based on what we hear from the school district.
May I just ask? So the school district, the school board's action is absolutely required on October 20th.
That's the last date that they can approve at a regularly scheduled meeting. If they wanted to hold another meeting, they could approve it up until the 27th as well, but we obviously don't want to ask them to have to do a special meeting as well.
The only reason I ask is because I'm a little concerned about the school board members, given what just occurred here recently, and maybe a shortened time frame for them to understand exactly what it is.
It's
they're
our taxes,
doing.
it's not theirs, so I don't know why they would really have an issue with, they send us our taxes when they collect our taxes. So instead of just sending it to us, they're sending it to the, whatever they call it, the new holder.
Right.
So it's really no skin off their back who they send the money to.
So there's
Same time frame.
everything that Mary's saying is absolutely correct. There's nothing about this agreement that should be a big deal, because basically all it is it's an agreement by the district to collect the same taxes they've been collecting, and instead of turning them over to us on a certain date, turning them over to somebody else on our behalf at a certain date. That said, you're onto something, Mike. I agree, and once we know that this agreement has been sort of vetted, I don't think it would be a bad thing for us to reach out to the members of the school board and just say, nothing to worry about here, no big change, please do this for us because it's going to save everyone money. But you're right, they're a bunch that has been burned multiple times in the last year, and they probably could be skeptical about an agreement that says tax pledge and collection.
Yeah, with the mechanics of it shifting ever so slightly, so
Their
they are
obligation
kind
isn't
of-
changing, it's just
Right.
that they're gonna send the wire to a different place.
Mike,
Andy had a question?
You used an acronym, the OS is.
Offering statement, thank you, I meant to say, I meant to correct myself. That's the document that that DASNY publishes to the world to tell them about these bonds and why they are safe, if you will.
Okay, to be continued, and we're gonna move on.
One quick thing, this is why we've suggested that we have a liaison between this board and the school board. This was one of the things that we talked about when we were first in kind of the early plans for this. So I know someone had volunteered for that, so we might be talking soon.
Okay, 5-year financial plan.
Okay. So in the board packet, it's a very high level 5-year financial plan. I just have to find the page. But in front of you, you have the detailed 5-year financial plan. Okay, so basically, the 5-year financial plan is a forecast of both the current year and 5 years out, trying to see, knowing everything we know at this point in time, what will happen with the library's finances. So when we met a couple weeks back with the Finance Committee, what we had at the time were the actual numbers for July year to date, a forecast for the second half of the year, and a forecast for 2016. And at that time, obviously we knew that we would be running a surplus in the second half of the year, and we had a slight deficit in the first half. And the forecast came out to be around income of $55,000. I'll be redoing this forecast again for you for the board retreat, because we just had a stellar month in August, which is going to mean that in 2016 we're probably going to come up with additional income. So I'll have that in the forecast, because where we start this whole thing and where we always look at it is what happens with the fund balance of the library. So basically on the right-hand side of the, we just held 1% tax increases per year. And obviously once we get the new bond numbers, those bond numbers will slightly change. And we basically kept revenue for the most part where it is. The only thing that we had some changes in, not too much, were in fines and fees going down, just because if we go to more ebooks, you know, that brings down our fines and fee income. But you basically have flat revenues over from 2017 through 2021. And when you think about the library, the biggest costs of the library are the salaries and benefits of the library. And we put in assumptions, but we don't have the contract yet, so the assumptions there in terms of, we assumed a 1.5% increase per year plus 0.75% step, but that might change obviously with the contract. In terms of the health insurance, in terms of the retirement, we used the 2016 percentages because those were favorable for the first year, plus a 3% increase over the years. For health insurance, we assumed an 8% increase in 2017 and 12% thereafter. And on the good note, you can see that heat and electric are obviously doing much better this year than budget. So we're still saying with the winters and such that we could have increases in the out years, 8% increase in telephone and 25,000 increase in maintenance, repairs, and supplies, because there's been so much more work needed in the buildings.
Mary, can I just walk us through this process a little bit? So what the 5-year plan really does is it gives us an idea of the direction we're moving financially. Mary sits down, she meets with every department head. We analyze past trends and then things we want to do and kind of combine them to give us an idea of whether or not those costs will, that revenue or that cost will increase or decrease. So the decline, like Mary was explaining, the decline with revenue has to do with the fact that we've seen over the last few years, every year we get less and less income from fines and fees. Part of that has to do with ebooks. There are no fines on ebooks. And then the second of it has to do with that less books go out, which we have seen a decrease in circulation. The less books are held late and the less fines that are paid. So that's why we made that estimate there. We always assume a kind of 10% increase in healthcare, because if you know the law in the state a little bit, and we talked about this when we did the MOU, there's capped years and non-capped years for healthcare. So one year, like this year, when we get how much our premiums are going up, it's capped. They have to go to, is it OSC, state comptroller, or is it a special department?
For what?
Okay, what was it?
For what?
It's a state insurance department.
State insurance department?
Yep.
So this year they'll be told, no, you cannot go higher than this. The year after, there is no cap. So we always keep it at 10 to 12%, because even if this year it comes in at 2%, the next year it may come in at 20%, which is something that we saw last year. So it's really, we sit down with our department heads and we just say, where do you see this going? What are the trends? I know our experience, the first time we brought it to last year's new finance committee was a little bit Allison and Mike both look like they needed a beer after they saw it, because it's a little disheartening, because you do see a drop in our balance to negative. However, this is a good exercise to do because it helps the administration and the board figure out what do we do to make sure that we don't get to this point where we've used all of our fund balance and now we're in the red. And I think I'm sold on this exercise, Mary, for, really kind of got me to embrace it, because what it's helped to do is it helps us realize where we need to find efficiencies and where we need to go and look for additional funds to get us through the year. And since I've really embraced this exercise, in the last 2 years, we haven't used any of our fund balance at all. And I think it helps us give a clearer kind of message to the public how we're using our funds and how important it is for our foundation to raise funds through their activities, and also for us to go out to grants and also for bulleting.
Right, so
that nature.
So really the bottom line, it's looking at the bottom line and looking at whether we have a surplus or a deficit in the forecast and how much we have left in the fund balance. So we obviously know the good news already for 2017 is based on the assumptions that we have in the forecast, we think that we'll use less money than we have budgeted. Right now we're saying that with everything in this forecast, we would use $322,000. We have budgeted to use $382,000. That, if some big project comes up in the year, though, it could obviously go higher. So these things are all fluid. But if we stay on the same path with the same type of head count that we have and everything that we have to pay for, we're good on the fund balance, obviously, 2018, 2019. When you get into 2020, then you really go below $1 million and you would be spending, over $1 million. And the same thing, we obviously couldn't function that way. So this is just reminding us like how far we can go out, keeping everything the same, doing everything the way we are doing it today. And if things continue this way, then we would obviously run out of fund balance. We would never operate on the out years. We would have to change something. That's what we obviously tell each other. But we really try to keep our eye on the big picture and then on the picture of this year, next year, and continue to sharpen the pencil.
And it's important for us to understand, for the board to understand, that we use fund balance monies in our operating budget, which I don't think anyone who knows municipal accounting is fond of, and it's something that we need to move away from at some point, or else we won't have a choice to move away from it.
Questions, comments? Are we all bedazzled?
Okay, a couple, obviously the observations that, any increases go to, the health insurance costs are unbelievable. That we're not increasing for materials or programs. We're not increasing the number of staff we have working here. We're not, we're saying that building improvements, actually we're estimating some sizable amounts for building improvements, but we don't have a capital plan yet. So those are huge, those are programmatic and fundamental issues for us, right? Like programs and materials and the safety of our staff and buildings. I just saw our lovely maintenance staff out there, and he's working overtime because we don't have enough staff. So,
it's a difficult
what I appreciate is that this shows a reality, and we have some hard work to do to think about how we're going to address all of those things that come up, like, more hours and outreach, and library should be everywhere, and like, yeah, okay, Well,
So to that point, this information will be available in our strategic planning session, right?
What we will be doing, and Mary's been gracious enough to come in on that Saturday, we will be doing a larger dive into this for the first hour or two of our board retreat, where we'll learn a little bit about how we do municipal and library accounting, as well as kind of getting before you do the big conversation about where we need to go in the future, having a deep understanding of where we are financially and where these, how costs are driven by strategic plans and issues.
So then the purpose of this tonight is to introduce us.
To introduce you, yeah, and I don't want to get you too bogged down in the details, but we do make a lot of assumptions, and we have several months of meetings on this. So this is what the assumptions were, but to Alyssa's point, there are a lot of variables in this. Mm-hmm. So any forecast is driven by whatever assumptions that you make in it.
We always, we open it up and we say it, but we'll say it again. If a board member has a question or additional conversation, call us.
Yeah.
You have my cell phone. You know how to get a hold of me. It's important for everybody to understand this, and we're more than willing to have you come in, or if you want to get a coffee after work, I'm more than willing to sit down with you and to just go over and try to field as many questions as possible. And typically what I do in those exercises is I go, Allison and I have had this conversation. It's like, well, you're going to ask me these questions. I'm going to repeat them again to the board. It's helpful for us to kind of teach us how to better communicate.
Well, and in our self-assessment, this issue has come up repeatedly, that we need more education on budget development, budget execution. And so linking that discussion with the strategic plan is timely.
Right, because I think that at that meeting, Scott wants me, and probably will spend more time going into how we develop a budget and how we work with you to develop the budget. But
extra caffeine.
There will be coffee and water. There will be.
I also have a request that what would be helpful is to know if you could do some, what's the percentage of our municipal funding and what's the percentage of funding that we're bringing in outside of municipal or state funding. And I kind of would like to see what is a national trend, because I know that we're not the only library system in the world who is looking at those two percentages. So my guess is we're at 90-something% municipal and state funding, and we have a grant goal here that stays constant over 5 years. So that's a big question, and from a strategic standpoint, that's what the board would kind of begin to chew on, and that dictates how we're going to advocate for the libraries. Because if we truly come out and say, libraries are essentially public, municipal and state responsibilities, so we're going to work for greater state and municipal funding, that dictates how we operate. Or if we're going to say we're going to explore, different various ways of funding the library, then we've got to look at those other numbers.
We can do it.
And that's an elemental, essential question that we do probably need to really deal with.
One thing that answers that, a portion of that, is we will start reporting. One thing I've asked is that we break out the budget where our central library funds are, as opposed to, usually they get wrapped in. I think it's important for, especially we're in the capital of New York, our constituents should know and be able to speak with their state representatives about how important that central reference library is to the libraries that receive it, and how it may need to be in the future used differently. And that's a whole other conversation that we're involved with Department of Library Development and New York Library Association and those subgroups that work off of that, and Upper Hudson, about some of the things that we've run into when it comes to Department of Library Development has told us we have to adhere to the law stricter than we have in the past. So you may actually...
For central library.
For central library ed. So we've broken that out, and we do want to start being a little clearer in that accounting so we understand, but it's like a 90-10% split. I mean, it's really, we're the largest school district library in the state of New York. We have no endowments. So when we met with Brooklyn Public Library the other day, they're an association, but they have tremendous endowments. Same with, no, they're a district. But New York Public is an example of that's all endowments. They have tons of money in the bank as investments.
So why don't we have endowments? Because
Well, the foundation's working on that. That's on their agenda.
Okay.
And we're hoping with an executive director, kind of, even though they're
Right.
part-time, kind of shepherding that ship, that we start to build something close to that.
Yeah, as Holly reported to us, 1 or 2 meetings ago, the work of the foundation continues to grow. And they have their feet on the ground and have had some success behind them. But there are many things on the list of growth opportunities for the foundation to support the library system.
But there's also our opportunities for earned income. And so, the grants and foundation support is one thing, but that takes a while to develop. And when you're talking about endowments, that's years before you get any return on that. So, earned income, and I'm not sure what that means, but I do think that there is entrepreneurial, creative ideas about how to use it, and we don't see that, and we see any earned income like fines and fees decreasing. So I think in terms of our planning that it would be great to start generating those possibilities.
We also have a real estate portfolio. I mean, we do, and that's something that I hope the board thinks.
Okay, so this is yet another discussion that's going to have ample opportunity to continue and to flesh out as we do our strategic planning. So I think we need to keep this information in mind. We'll get more information, drilling down deeper into the discussion or the budget process, but how that links, Alyssa, to your point of developing other opportunities and really being strategic and creative about how to brighten this picture even more. Okay, speaking of budgets, UHLS Central Library budget for 2017. Who's speaking to this?
Or Arlene, we presented it when Tim came to our last meeting.
Right.
To talk about it. This is just kind of the final piece. He had to go to his board to say we were, all the boards he presented it to were okay with it. The only, and this might have been where your question would be good, Mike, is, the only reason the board would even think about not voting to support it would to send some type of message about the way Department of Library Development is kind of telling us we now need to spend central library funds. But I think that's picking a fight with not an adversary, but a strong, losing return. But I can see where you were going with that, but I don't think this is an outward.
I would agree with you the more than I thought about it.
So do I have a motion to approve?
Can I just ask, what were we given last year? How does this compare to last year?
It's a little more money. They last year, and I'm on this committee, so I say they. We gave a little bit. We covered the full amount of an L1 cost. Where it's changed is, and this is a positive and a negative, we can no longer use Central Reference Library money for children's material, which is something everybody's upset about, so children's ebooks. And we can no longer use it for fiction ebooks, which we were doing.
Why is that?
Because it's Central Reference Funds.
Oh, I see.
A little bit of history, and I'll be quick. Back, a long time ago when this law was written, it was like 60 years ago, there was no Google. You got in your car and you drove to Albany on a Sunday because Albany was the only library that was open. And we got money from the state to buy giant reference books that our reference librarians would pull out and answer the questions that you now get within 2 seconds of asking Siri. So that's why the law was started. We've massaged it over the years. Upper Hudson had a brilliant plan of, we're going to use the majority of this money to buy ebooks and build a robust ebook collection, which I think was a great plan. However, it was playing with the law because by doing that, we were buying fiction. DLD, it's very hard to sneak anything past DLD when they're literally down the road from you. They realized we were buying fiction ebooks and said, no, this is how you need to stand by the law. It needs to be nonfiction and nonfiction only. That left around $70,000-$80,000, and we didn't know what to do with it. So we went back to the good old, and this is what we used it for about 10 years ago, 5-10 years ago, which is databases, which we love. However, patrons don't use or didn't use when we got them. We've made an agreement that we will put in a concerted effort to start driving usage to these databases, and we picked two that were popular and I've heard about since I've come back, which was Mango, which is a language software which has been putting more money into e-magazines and how people receive e-magazines. And this is where it's kind of a win for Albany Public Library. The system will be getting a system-wide app, the exact same app that we have now, so it's not going to be a big difference for our users. But that'll be, I think it's about $4,000 off of our plate that we're going to dump into ebooks to make up for that $80,000 hole that's been created. So we're just taking the money we spent on e-fiction books that we're told we cannot do anymore, and we will be spending them on these products until either NYLA and the Central Libraries really advocate to change
the legislation.
Well, I don't know, and then there's always that discussion, do you want to change the legislation? Do you want to open that up? I mean, we just had a fight over 414 libraries. And if anybody's interested in 414 libraries, I will explain it after the meeting another day. So sorry. So we don't know if we want to actually open and change the law and maybe just get DLD to agree they're going to interpret it differently, or the fight might be to say, hey, we need to rewrite the law and have it focus on ebook collections. We'll see, but as you know, with state government, I will be gray and probably have grandchildren by the time this change happens. So for right now, this is what we're going to live
With him at the helm?
with.
Are you kidding?
Without Mike.
Other questions or discussion? Mike, you had your hand up. Was it to make a motion?
Yes.
Oh.
It was. I would make a motion to accept the proposed Central Library Development Aid budget.
Second.
Is that a second? Okay.
Wrong inflection.
Any other discussion?
Just one, and that is the fact that DLD has come back and said you have to, use it to the letter of the law is something that's going on with all of the systems, that they are cracking down on it. It used to be that we actually had more staff in this, right? Because we had people ordering the books and the resources. So this is a problem and the concept of central libraries. So this is a lot of money in our budget, and if something changes, that changes.
Yes.
So this is not guaranteed forever that way.
Nothing is.
Well, no, but
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Abstained? The motion carries. Okay, update on the strategic plan?
We closed out our surveys today, and that was the kind of final portion to get the public input on the plan. I think we received around 795 online respondents, and then about 200 and change of paper respondents, which were collected today. We're going to go through the data soon, but I can tell you that 63% of the respondents rated us as excellent, and 26 rated us as good. So that's like a 90% rating. 1,000, being close to 1,000, we were happy with. We hope to get more in the future, but we're going to go through that and go through all those suggestions just to see and have,
is
it's an
Stephanie
outside
reading
look.
every one of them? Or Stephanie?
No.
Her head shot up.
Her phone's been ringing a lot though from someone's office. So the next stage is the retreat.
So we'll get a report from those prior to the.
Yes.
And so prior to the retreat, will we see an agenda or a plan?
Yes.
Or,
We're meeting. I think it's tomorrow or the day after tomorrow to go over the agenda.
Very good.
And who will be at the meeting besides us?
Board of Trustees, Mary, the president of the Friends or a representative of the Friends, president of the foundation, and then we're working on some of the other administrative staff, whoever can fit it into their schedule to be there as well for a portion.
And the surveys, it included staff surveys? Do we have a specific staff survey?
We always do a staff survey. We do a staff survey every year. So they're basing, Anne is basing her off of the last staff survey. So we're not
Next,
gonna do it again until
late November.
late November.
So the staff, how is the staff, other than being represented by administration?
Focus groups.
Focus groups.
There are multiple.
Oh, you did
Oh, yeah, the focus
staff
group portion is
focus
done.
groups?
There were
Okay.
2 staff
And we'll see the
focus
results
groups.
of those?
Yes, and the supervisor's
Okay.
focus group as well.
Sure.
Okay, the gala, and closing the library early.
We rotate the gala every year to a different location, and when we do that, we ask, and this has been past practice, the first year was we just closed completely, or no?
No, we didn't close until
We didn't close till 5.
5, and we learned our lesson.
Delaware, the next year, we realized to close at 3, so before us is just the library administration and the foundation are asking to close at 3 o'clock as opposed to 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock.
Sorry.
Because
5
the gala
o'clock.
starts at 6, and so we need the time for setup.
We can do some preparation, but some of it is moving large amounts of furniture, and we'd rather not have people in the building.
That's reasonable.
Do you
Some
need a
time to
motion?
make it right.
I make a motion that we close the Arbor Hill West Hill on the night of the gala at 3 p.m. instead of the
We
normal.
have a second,
close
any
time.
questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay, sale of MakerBot.
So we bought a MakerBot 3D printer. They are the Yugos of 3D printers is the best way to put it. It has not worked well for us, and we don't have the staff to maintain it. We have another 3D printer that we've used and we're happy with. It's a totally different company. Bethlehem Public Library took our MakerBot to fix it. They fixed it, but it broke again. There's a thing on it called an extruder, which shoots the filament out. We realized that they can use it, but they can use it because they have staff dedicated to fixing it every time it breaks, and we do not. So they have offered to buy it for $500, and then we would give them the additional filament that goes with it because of what we're going to do with it.
Little
Doesn't necessarily
back
work.
history, MakerBot was the first producer of the consumer 3D printers. They did well, they expanded and decided to open up a whole bunch of storefronts, and within, I think, 6 months to 1 year, they realized that that was a horrible mistake, and they ended up closing those storefronts, laying off 90 or 80% of their staff. And due to that, their customer service for these units dropped drastically. Like when we needed help with these machines, we couldn't get anybody online for like months.
Any objections to making this transaction?
That's the question, is 500 for all of it, not the 300?
Yeah,
Okay.
since it broke again.
Sell it, unload it,
Yeah.
get rid of it.
Okay, any public comment?
And I think this goes just on a note on it, that when you were talking about the art, something similar would have happened with the art. If
All
we
right.
ever decided.
Bob tells me we have to actually vote on the MakerBot, so do I have a motion? Mike?
Motion.
Do we have a second? Okay, any other questions or discussion?
It's not.
All in favor? We're voting over here, folks. All in favor?
I'll look up, so.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay, the motion carries.
I just had a question on the 5-year plan. Did we need to approve that in this meeting, or was it going to be over to the next?
Calls over to the next.
Okay, so this is just informational today. Great, thank you.
Okay, we don't need an executive session, right? So the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.